Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here, and today I'm coming at you with part 2 of a two-part series, and it is on the NFL season preview. And in the first video, I did my standings predictions. So if you didn't see that, you should go back and watch that to get a take on how I think each division will shake out this year, and just how I think teams will perform overall and where they'll finish within their division. And so in the second video, I'm going to be talking about who I think will win various NFL awards for the year, and then how I think the playoffs will shake out, and who I think will ultimately end up as the Super Bowl champion in February of this next year. So I'm going to start off with the NFL awards, and the first award I'm going to talk about is Offensive Rookie of the Year. I think that this award will be going to Saquon Barkley of the New York Giants. I think that they're going to run the ball to him quite a bit. I think that Eli Manning is going to take a noticeable step back as far as offensive production. I don't think that he'll get significantly worse, Eli Manning that is. I think that they'll just feed the ball a lot to Saquon Barkley and that he'll get a lot of yards. I'd say a 1,000-yard season isn't out of the question. I think he'll just get the ball a ton. And so, yeah, I see him being the Offensive Rookie of the Year. I don't think that any of the quarterbacks will win it because I don't think that any of them will put up amazing stats or anything. I think that any of the ones that are going to be starting a lot will struggle, and all the other ones will be riding the bench their first year. So that's why I think it'll be Barkley instead of any of these quarterbacks that we've got, the plethora of them being drafted this year. As far as Defensive Rookie of the Year, I see Bradley Chubb of the Denver Broncos winning it. The Broncos really have a solid defense and good defensive culture, and I see that rubbing off on Bradley Chubb, and he was already a very high draft pick, very talented player, and I see him continuing that into the NFL and being better than a guy like Myles Garrett, who was recently drafted and expected to be amazing. I think that Bradley Chubb will be a great edge rusher, and he will do really good things for the Broncos. Even though they won't be a great team, I think that people will notice his standout play and decide to give the Defensive Player of the Year award to him. So moving on, I'm going to next talk about Comeback Player of the Year, which I think will be given to Ezekiel Elliott. He missed a substantial portion of last year, almost all of it. I think he only played in maybe one definitely less, 4 games or less, I'm pretty sure. I see him playing the full 16 this year, barring injury, and being really good, having the production levels that he did when he was a rookie and setting the world on fire when they were 13-3. I think that their offense runs through him like it did 2 years ago, and he shows us why they needed him last year when they didn't make the playoffs, and he does a lot of good things for them again and wins Comeback Player of the Year. I think that one's pretty cut and dry. For Coach of the Year, I have Anthony Lynn of the Los Angeles Chargers winning. I think that people expect the Chargers to be decent but not a division winner, and I do expect them to be a division winner. And for that reason, I think that he will win. I think they'll surprise some people. I think that they won't have a huge win total. I don't think that they'll win more than 10 to 11 games. Like, they won't be 15-1, but I think that people will just be surprised by how good they are, and because of that, Anthony Lynn will win Coach of the Year. Let's see here. Moving on. I think that the Defensive Player of the Year will be Calais Campbell for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He had a really good year last year. He's had a lot of really good years recently. I see them being the top defense in the NFL, and I see them having the best record in the AFC, possibly even the entire NFL. So for those 2 reasons, I see Calais Campbell being in the conversation and the front runner, in my opinion. I think if you're the best defensive player on the best defensive team, on the team that has the best, if not second best record in the league, you are going to be a top Defensive Player of the Year candidate, and that is why I have Calais Campbell as my Defensive Player of the Year this year. As far as Offensive Player of the Year, I have Le'Veon Bell of the Steelers winning that. I think that he's going to really make the Steelers want to pay him more than they already do. They aren't giving him the big contract extension, but he really wants it. He's not getting it, and I think he's going to just perform his heart out just to show that he deserves it, and that they will eventually give it to him. I expect huge numbers. He's great. He's a dual back. He can catch for a bunch of yards and touchdowns. He can run all over you, up and down the field. Can score a lot of touchdowns that way too. And I see him putting up huge numbers this year. And as far as MVP, I see a rare case of not being an NFL quarterback this year. I don't think it'll go to Brady because I don't think that they will have a huge, like 15-1 season. I think that they'll take a small step back, and he will take a small step back and not repeat. I think that the Saints will be good, but this new style that they play, they don't emphasize Drew Brees' gaudy stats as much, so I don't think that he will have the amazing stats. I think that it's really going to come down to, and besides that, when you look at quarterbacks, there's no one really else who, I think the argument is Aaron Rodgers or Todd Gurley for the Los Angeles Rams, because I think that he's the best player on that offense, and I think that they will have the best record in the NFC, if not the NFL. I think them and the Jaguars are the top two teams, in my opinion. And if you're the best offensive player on the team that has the best record in the NFL, I think that a lot of times that propels you into the conversation. I think that he will again put up monstrous rushing yards and have a lot of touchdowns like last year. I see him being the go-to player on their offense, the catalyst of that offense, and I think if they have that great record that he will win offense or MVP. And I think the only thing holding Rodgers back would be that if they don't win the division, I don't think that he'll win it. If they are like 12-4, I think that he will win MVP. But if they come in second place in our wild card team, somehow I just don't see him winning it. I think people want to see more. But maybe he puts up a season where he has 48 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, and then yeah, I'd say definitely give it to him. Or if they have a record like 13-3, he's obviously the one who's propelling that. But if they just finish like 10-6 and he puts up 35 and 14, I don't see him winning it because he's put up seasons like that before and not won it. I think that unfortunately for a lot of players, they might put up great stats but don't win MVP because of their team success isn't there. Really, a lot of times I think that MVP and a lot of these awards just go to best player on the best team, which is unfortunate, but the way it works sometimes. Not necessarily talent-based, but more based on your team. But yeah, I see Todd Gurley winning MVP. Alright, so now I'm going to move on to my playoff predictions. So I'll talk about the seedings for each side. In the AFC, I see the Jaguars as the #1 overall seed. I talked about their record earlier. I think that they'll be the best team in the AFC. At the #2, I see the Patriots also getting a bye at around 12-4. At the #3, I have the Steelers, who I said would be about 11-5 or 12-4, I think. As the 4th seed, the last division winner, I have the Chargers at around 10-6. At the 5 seed, I have the Ravens, who I said I thought would be between 9-7 and 10-6. And as the 6th seed, I have the Texans, actually, not the Chiefs. I see the Chiefs. They're like the team that I could easily see being subbed in for either the Ravens or the Texans, but somehow I think Patrick Mahomes might struggle a bit more than people think he will. I could be completely wrong, but that's just me. That's just a personal idea. But I could be proved completely wrong. But I haven't seen him play really at all, so I want to see what he's got before I just hand him the title of great NFL player. But yeah, I like the Texans with the good defense and getting Deshaun Watson back and having Hopkins and Lamar Miller, I think, are good offensive weapons for him. And if he continues his play, I'd really like to see what they could do in the playoffs. So I'll just go through the entire AFC up till who I think will make it to the Super Bowl, and then I'll go through the NFC and who I think will make it for them to the Super Bowl. So in the second round, that would leave us with the Chargers as the 4 seed, visiting the Jaguars in Jacksonville as the 1 seed, and we would have the Steelers as the 3, visiting the Patriots as the 2. And I see 2 upsets here, actually. I see the Chargers beating the Jaguars, and I see the Steelers beating the Patriots. I think that this could finally be the year that the Steelers break through and beat the Patriots. I think that the Patriots have lost enough. Not lost a ton, but lost enough where they're more vulnerable than they've been in the past. No Edelman for the first couple of games. And yes, the Patriots have dealt with things before where Brady's been suspended for games. He's come back and been great. I know. But they lost their defensive coordinator, who was really the mastermind behind recovering that defense that was not doing well for a bit last year. They lost him. They nearly lost Josh McDaniels. I just think for the first time I see some instability in the Patriots, or signs of instability, and I think they're more vulnerable than they've been in the past. And I think that the Steelers still have Big Ben rocking, still have Le'Veon Bell, still have Antonio Brown, and I think that their offense is a bit too much to handle for that Patriots D. I think that the Steelers defense is decent, which is, I think it's going to be better than the Patriots. So I think the offenses cancel out, and the Steelers defense is better than the Patriots, so I see the Steelers winning this matchup. And that will lead us to the AFC Championship game being between the Chargers and the Steelers in Pittsburgh, because they are the 3 and the Chargers are the 4. And I think that this Chargers team is good, but not a Super Bowl team. And I think that even though they beat the Jaguars, the Cinderella story would stop here. Steelers have more experience in these situations. Big Ben is Super Bowl tested. They just have a lot more playoff experience overall than this Chargers team does. And for that reason, I see the Steelers winning. I think they have a much better offense. I think you just go the matchups. You could say Big Ben and Phillip Rivers are pretty similar as far as talent level. I'd say Le'Veon Bell is definitely better than Melvin Gordon, and I'd say that Antonio Brown is definitely better than Keenan Allen. So for those reasons, I picked their offense. Now the Chargers do have a significantly better defense, but I don't think that. I think that the Steelers' offense is better than the Chargers' defense, and for that reason, I'm going to pick the Steelers to go to the Super Bowl. And now in the NFC, I have as my 1 seed the Rams at about 13-3, as said previously in the other video. Eagles as a 2 seed at about 12-4 is my tentative prediction. The Vikings as a 3 at about 11-5. Subject to change, but I have them as a 3. The Saints as the 4 at also about 11-5. I just see Vikings having a tiebreaker. Packers as my 5 at around 10-6 or 11-5, and the Falcons as my 6 seed at basically 10-6, maybe 9-7. And so in the first round, I see the Vikings beating the Falcons in Minneapolis, and I see the Saints beating the Packers in New Orleans. Basically behind the Vikings one, I think that their defense is a lot better than the Falcons' offense, and I think that the Vikings' offense and the Vikings' offense is also better than the Falcons' defense. So I just see them winning that, not too much hassle. Between the Saints and the Packers, I see this one being really close. Obviously, on both these teams, Aaron Rodgers is the best player, but Drew Brees is pretty close to Aaron Rodgers as far as talent level. He's got a lot more weapons around him. He's got the slightly better defense, and for that reason, I think the Saints edge the Packers, but in a very, very close game that's probably pretty high scoring, probably like 35-34, something like that. In the divisional round, I have the Rams hosting the Saints, the 1 versus the 4, and the Eagles hosting the Vikings, the 2 versus the 3. I have the Eagles beating the Vikings, but in a closer matchup than last year. But I do think there is something to the Vikings struggling in these cold weather stadiums late in the season. I think that since they play inside for half their games, or actually 9 of their games because they play the Lions, they don't have to weather the cold as much as other teams do that play in the cold weather all year. So for that, that's not the only reason. I also think that the Eagles, if Wentz is healthy, have a better offense than the Vikings, and the defenses will basically cancel each other out, so that leaves the Eagles, to me, as the better team. And then the Rams as the 1 versus the Saints as the 4. I think that they have very similarly talented offenses. Todd Gurley is a beast for the Rams. Jared Goff is okay. Well, actually, I'll say the Saints have the better offense pretty easily, actually. But I think the Rams have a much more overwhelming defense than the Saints do. So essentially, I think the Rams offense and the Saints defense will cancel each other out. But I think that the Rams defense is better than the Saints offense. So I'm picking the Rams for that reason. And then in the NFC Championship game, I have Rams hosting the Eagles. and I have the Rams winning this one. Mainly because I see the Rams as having a better defense than the Eagles do, and as far as offense, I think they're actually pretty equal too. This is a pretty equal matchup right here. Like, I'd say this will be more the Super Bowl than the Steelers playing whoever comes out, because I think that the Eagles and the Rams will be the best two teams in the NFL overall. But I think that the Rams will just edge them out. And I can't say why definitively, but I just see the Rams beating the Eagles. They have too much on defense. Almost every position could be a Pro Bowler or an All-Pro. And the Eagles have a great defense, just not as good. And I think that Carson Wentz and Todd Gurley would be about equal value on offense, because I'll have Todd Gurley as my MVP. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Rams offense can keep up with the Eagles offense. So for these reasons, I have the Rams winning. Super Bowl of Steelers versus Rams. And now, although I just got done saying I think the Rams and Eagles are better than the Steelers, I do think that the Steelers will win the Super Bowl in this season. Why? Because I think that the Super Bowl is a much different animal than even playoff football or regular season football. It's 2 weeks later. Your rhythm gets a little messed up. You could be a little rusty. Really, I think that the Steelers just have all the experience on their side, which is a lot bigger of a factor than I think a lot of people give it credit for. Why do the Patriots always get so far? Yes, they have decent talent, but they have so much experience and knowledge of the playoffs. I think that's something that in this Rams-Steelers matchup, the Steelers would definitely have over the Rams. When you've been to the playoffs more, you've seen a lot more. You're a lot more familiar with just everything and how it goes on. Mike Tomlin's won a Super Bowl and been to one before. He gets to the playoffs pretty deep in the playoffs every year, where Sean McVay will still be a young, relatively inexperienced guy. He's only going to be, I think, 31. I think Jared Goff will definitely wilt under the pressure, and once the Steelers send 8 guys to the box rushing the Rams O-line and Todd Gurley gets stuffed, then Jared Goff will have to win the game for them, and I don't think that Jared Goff can win a Super Bowl. Now, maybe he can, and maybe I'll be wrong, because, a guy just won a Super Bowl in Nick Foles, who no one thought could do it, and no one thought was good enough. So anything can happen. With the NFL, when they only play one game in the playoffs, it's so unpredictable, but these are what I think will happen. I'm saying Steelers will be Super Bowl champs. It'll be a really good playoff, so especially in the NFC, where I think, honestly, you could see 5 different teams get to the Super Bowl, which is really exciting. So there you go, guys. That's my predictions for who will win the various NFL awards of this season and how the playoffs will transpire and who I think will be victorious in the end. Hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any comments, whether agreeing or disagreeing with me, write them in the comment section below. I'd love to hear from you and talk about it a little bit. And I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.